So in today's video, I just wanted to talk about what happens to your leave to remain if you like your permission to stay in UK if your marriage ends. So for example, if you're separate or you get a divorce, what actually happens to your marriage? This will be a case of where if your permission to stay in UK is based on your relationship with your partner or your spouse of a British citizen and someone settled in UK. So if you were to separate or you get a divorce, your marriage comes to an end, what actually happens to your visa? What options do you have? So basically, does your visa come to an end? Do you stay or do you leave? What can you do? So today's video will be looking at what your options are. Whether you stay or leave will depend on your actually personal circumstances. So let's look at that one by one. So basically, if you have permission to stay in UK, because you're married to a British citizen or someone settled in UK, or your permission is based on your relationship with your partner, and you separate or your marriage comes to an end in terms of divorce, the first and first is not to allow your visa to actually expire. So basically, you will need to notify Home Office of the changes, because it's a big change of circumstance. Do remember that you're giving your leave to remain is based on your relationship with your partner. It's based on the fact that you have genuine relationship, is subsisting, and you intend to live permanently together. But we know that life happens. If that relationship comes to an end, you separate or you get a divorce, then Home Office need to know about it. So basically, in terms of how do you notify Home Office, you can do this online or you can do this by post. So if you're applying through the post, then there's something called public statement. This would be a case if you don't want Home Office to tell your ex-partner about your letter or about the details of your letter, then you need to print that form, sign it, and send it off to them. And then there's another one that is also consent. If you want Home Office to disclose details of your letter, then in that case, you need to then sign the consent form and send it to them. So these are the things you need to do to start off with. So you notify Home Office. Now, in terms of whether you carry on staying, it will depend, like I said earlier, on your circumstances. So you could choose either to carry on staying in UK or to leave. But whatever happens, if you're intending to stay in UK, do not allow your visa to expire. So in terms of when you're notifying Home Office, I'm just going to look away from the camera and then I'll tell you what you need to do. So if you are notifying Home Office, in terms of the form is actually on gov.uk website. You can either do it online, as I've said earlier, or if you're sending it by post, then you can do that. So those forms, the public statement, it's just a form that you print from the gov.uk website and send it off. And when sending it off, the form, you must attach a cover letter. So the cover letter, so basically, of course, you're notifying Home Office that your relationship has ended. So you must attach a cover letter, and the letter should include your name, date of birth, address, passport number, Home Office reference number. So you find this in the letter that Home Office sent to you. You also include your partner's detail or children you have, all those, your partners, the names of and dates of birth of the children. So all those critical information you must include and send it off to Home Office. Now, before we move any further, just to say that this video, as usual, a disclaimer, contains information only. It does in no way represent legal advice. Whilst every effort is made to ensure that the information you get is accurate, I would strongly suggest and also advise that you do your due diligence checks, seek advice if unsure, because the information that I'm providing might not suit your particular situation. So it's always good to ask questions and seek advice. Now, with that being said, let's continue with our video. So if you've stuck around to this point, do consider subscribing to this channel or share to other people so they will know, because there's always a confusion with this sort of thing. Like if I'm on a spousal visa and it comes to an end, while I leave UK, what do I do? Now, I did say that I will talk about the options that you have. So this will be a situation where you have separated, your marriage comes to an end, either you get a divorce, and what options do you actually have? You do have a range of options. If you decide to stay in UK, you do have options, but this, like I said earlier, will depend on your personal circumstances. So in terms of whether you can switch to another route, it also depends. So basically, you have option. You can be able to switch, to a different route, but this depends, as I said earlier, on your personal circumstances. Let's assume now that you have children. So basically, if you have children or you have a child, you may be able to apply to stay in UK or switch to a parent route, which will be if you've got a British child, British citizen child that is settled in UK, or you've got a child that is not born in UK but have lived in UK for 7 years, you may be able to apply or switch to that route, apply as a parent of a child, who has lived in UK for 7 years, or as a British child that is settled in UK. So you may be able to make an application on that route. So, in my next video, I'll be doing a video on the different routes that you may be able to apply if this was to be applicable to you. So yeah, so you may be able to apply to settle as a parent on a parent route is called. You may also be able to apply on a private route. So especially if you've lived in UK for so long, you may be able to apply on that route to actually, so basically switch on that route. So this will be a situation where your marriage has come to an end and you decide to continue staying in UK. Then you may be able to make that application either on a private route to settlement. Especially this will be applicable if you've stayed in the UK, if you've lived in UK for a long time, or you may be able to apply as a parent of a child, a British citizen child, who is settled in UK, or a parent of a child who wasn't born in UK but have lived in UK for 7 years. So you may be able to make that application. You may also be able to make application, on a long residence. So basically, long residence means that you've lived in UK for more than 10 years or more. You may be able to make application on that route. So basically, just to quickly recap, the first one I mentioned is that you may be able to make application on a parent route. So if you're a parent of a British citizen child that is settled in UK, or you're a parent of a child who wasn't born in UK but have lived in UK for 7 years, your marriage has come to an end, then you may be able to apply on that route. So basically, you may be able to switch to that route. The other one is if you've lived in UK for so long, so you've lived there for a number of years, you may be able to apply based on your private life in UK, or the long residence. If you've lived in UK for 10 years at least or more, you may be able to explore that. Now, the other option, the other route you might also be able to explore is what is called domestic violence concession. So if there was domestic violence in your marriage or in your relationship, or maybe your marriage actually come to an end due to abuse or domestic violence, then you may be able to make application on that route. Do note that when we're talking about domestic violence, it's not only physical abuse, it can include both emotional, financial abuse, sexual abuse, controlling or coercive behavior, so those kind of falls under abuse. So if that is applicable to you, you can make application on those grounds, on that ground rather. So basically, so you can make application. There's other visa route, but I just mentioned a few of them. It depends on your circumstances. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, if your permission to stay in UK is based on your relationship with your partner, and you separate or your marriage comes to an end, you got a divorce, then the first thing first is to let Home Office know that this is the case. I have mentioned how you can do that. You can do that online. You can send, do that by post. So if if it's a case that you don't want your ex-partner to know about the details of your letter, then there is a form on gov.uk website called public statement. Just print the form and then sign it and send it off. But if you want Home Office to disclose details of your letter, then you need to fill in the consent form in terms of what information that you need to include. I've gone through that: name, address, date of birth, name of your partner, if you've got children, all those information. And I will also put these details on the description in my videos, so the link, so you can also look it up yourself. So once you notified Home Office, the key thing about if you're in this situation is to not to allow your visa to expire. So so basically, once you notify Home Office, then you need to explore which routes that you can apply to, which is applicable. I mentioned a few of them. You can either apply as a parent of a British citizen child that is settled in UK, or a child that is not born in UK but have lived in UK for 7 years. you can apply through, switch that route if it applies to you and if you meet all the criteria. And like I said, I'll be doing a separate video on each of these routes. Or you can apply for under the private life to say, private route. So especially if you've lived in UK for so long, then you can apply through that route. Or if you've lived in UK for 10 years or more, this is called long residence, then you can apply through that route. And I did mention the domestic violence. If your relationship ended due to domestic violence, so domestic violence is not only to do with physical abuse, it can include emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, coercive control, controlling behavior, all those things. So if this is applicable to you, you can make application. There are also other routes that you can make application on them, but I've mentioned a few of them, so you can actually make the application. So when you do hear the kind of discussion or the hear this that, oh, if your marriage ends you have to leave UK, it's not necessarily the case. So if your marriage ends, then you have option. So the good thing is you have option to switch to another visa category if it's applicable to you. But the key thing, do not allow your visa to expire. Do take action. Let Home Office know. This will be also the case if somebody else if your partner was dependent on your visa, this will be the same criteria. So in my next video, I'll be doing this different visa route. I will be doing a video on the parent route. So for example, if your marriage has come to an end and you've got, and you're a parent of a child or children, and then you may be able to explore that route. So I will do application on the parent route, private route, domestic violence concession if that is applicable, and the 10 years long resident route. So if you've stuck around to this point, do consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Do share to other people. Thank you for stopping by. And before I just end this video, just to say again a disclaimer that video contains information only. It doesn't nowhere represent legal advice. Do seek advice if you're unsure of the issues that is raised in this video. Thank you and bye-bye for now.